A man at the bar put his hand on mine and said, "I'm your father, and you need to come with me right now." I was halfway through my second beer when a rough hand covered mine on the bar counter. The touch was gentle but urgent, and I looked up into the face of a man I'd never seen before. He was maybe 55 with gray stubble and tired eyes that looked like they'd seen too many hard years. "I'm your father, and you need to come with me right now," he said, and his voice cracked on the word father. I pulled my hand back and laughed because this had to be some kind of joke. "Buddy, I think you've had too much to drink," I said, trying to catch the bartender's attention. But the man didn't move. He just stared at me with this desperate intensity that made my skin crawl. "Please," he said, "just give me 5 minutes. After that, if you want me to leave, I'll go and you'll never see me again." Something in his voice made me pause. This wasn't the rambling of a drunk person or someone looking for money. This was genuine desperation. 5 minutes, I said, glancing at my watch. "Then I'm calling security." The man nodded quickly and pulled out his wallet with shaking hands. From behind a stack of old receipts and faded business cards, he extracted a photograph. The paper was creased and yellowed with age, like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. He placed it on the bar between us. The photo showed a younger version of him, maybe in his late 20s, holding 2 identical babies wrapped in blue hospital blankets. His face in the photo was fuller, healthier, and he was smiling despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "That's me, 28 years ago," he said, tapping the image. "And these are my sons, twins." I looked at the babies, trying to figure out why he was showing me this. They looked like any newborns, red-faced and tiny. Then my eyes caught on something that made my blood run cold. The baby on the left had a distinctive birthmark on his small hand, a dark spot shaped almost like a comma. I had the exact same birthmark on my left hand. Same size, same shape, same location. My mouth went dry, and I pulled my hand back, tucking it under the bar. "Lots of people have birthmarks," I said, but my voice sounded unconvincing even to me. "Not like that one," the man said, and he was leaning forward now, his eyes locked on mine. "That's a rare capillary malformation. Less than 1% of people have that specific pattern. The doctors told me when you were born that it was unique." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was crazy, but I couldn't stop staring at that baby's hand in the photo. "Who are you, really?" I asked. "My name is David Montgomery," he said, "and I'm your biological father. Your real name is Caleb Montgomery, not Caleb Sutherland. You were born at Mercy Hospital on March 15th at 3:47 in the morning. My birthday was March 15th, but I'd always been told I was born at home with a midwife present, that there were no hospital records because it had been an emergency home birth. That's what my parents had always said." "This doesn't make sense," I said, pushing the photo back toward him. "My parents adopted me when I was a baby. They told me my birth mother died in a car accident and my birth father was unknown. They went through a private adoption agency." David's face twisted with something between anger and grief. "Your birth mother, Rebecca, died from complications after giving birth to you and your brother. There was no car accident, and I wasn't unknown. I was very known. I was a 27-year-old addict living on the streets who couldn't take care of 2 newborn babies." The words hit me like cold water. "You said brother?" I managed to say. "Twins. You said twins." David nodded and tapped the photo again. "Your brother Isaac. You were both born at the same time, both taken by Child Protective Services when you were 3 days old. A wealthy family wanted to adopt a baby, but they only wanted one. They chose you." I felt like the floor was tilting under me. "I don't have a brother. I'm an only child." "That's what they told you," David said, and his voice was bitter now. "Richard and Diane Sutherland specifically requested to adopt only one twin, not both. The social worker tried to keep you together, but they refused. Said they only had resources for one child. One of you got a mansion in the suburbs and private schools. The other got bounced between 6 foster families before aging out of the system at 18. My hands were shaking now, and I gripped the edge of the bar to steady myself. "Even if this were true, which I don't believe, why are you telling me now? Why tonight?" David's eyes filled with tears, and he wiped them away roughly with the back of his hand. "Because I need you to come with me right now. Isaac is in the hospital, and he's dying." The word dying echoed in my head. "What?" "He has acute myeloid leukemia," David said, the medical terms coming out carefully like he'd practiced them. "Aggressive, fast-moving. He was diagnosed 4 months ago, and the treatment isn't working. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and I'm not a match. Neither are any of the people on the donor registry." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "So you track me down and tell me I have a dying brother I never knew about? This is insane. This is actually insane." "I know how it sounds," David said desperately, "but I can prove everything. I have birth certificates, hospital records, court documents from the custody case. I have DNA test results showing I'm your father. I've been looking for you for 10 years, and I finally found you 3 months ago." "3 months ago?" I repeated. "You've known where I was for 3 months, and you're just approaching me now?" David looked down at his weathered hands. "I was scared. I watched you from a distance. I saw you leave your apartment building every morning for work. I saw you meet friends at restaurants. I saw you living this successful, happy life, and I didn't want to destroy it. But then Isaac got worse, and his doctor said he has maybe 8 weeks left without a transplant. I couldn't wait anymore. The bartender came over and asked if everything was okay. I realized other people at the bar were staring at us. We're fine, I said automatically, even though nothing was fine. After the bartender left, I turned back to David. You said you have proof. Show me. David pulled out a manila folder that had been sitting on the bar stool next to him. Inside were documents that looked official and old. He spread them out carefully. The first was a birth certificate from Mercy Hospital dated 28 years ago. It showed Rebecca Ann Montgomery giving birth to twin boys at 3:47 a.m. and 3:52 a.m. Baby A was listed as Caleb James Montgomery. Baby B was listed as Isaac Thomas Montgomery. The mother's cause of death was listed as postpartum hemorrhage. I felt sick looking at it. This could be fake, I said weakly. Anyone can make fake documents. David pulled out another paper. This is the court order from Family Court, granting the Sutherlands permission to adopt you. It specifically notes that they declined to adopt both twins and that the second child would remain in state custody. My parents' names were right there in black and white. Richard Allen Sutherland and Diane Marie Sutherland. The document was dated just 4 days after my birth. The social worker wrote this note, David said, pointing to handwriting in the margin. She expressed concern about separating identical twins, but ultimately approved the adoption because, quote, the Sutherlands have substantial financial resources to provide an excellent home for one child, unquote. I couldn't breathe properly. The bar felt too hot and too loud. I need air, I said, standing up. David grabbed his folder and followed me outside. The parking lot was mostly empty and cool night air hit my face. I leaned against the brick wall and tried to steady my breathing. I know this is overwhelming, David said quietly, but Isaac is in room 412 at St. Catherine's Hospital right now, and he's been asking about you since I told him I found you. He wants to meet his brother before it's too late. This is too much, I said. You can't just show up and tell me my entire life is a lie. I'm not saying your life is a lie, David said. I'm saying you didn't have all the information. The Sutherlands loved you and gave you a good life, but they made a choice to keep you away from your brother, and now he's running out of time. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling my parents. They'll explain this. David didn't try to stop me. I dialed my dad's number with shaking fingers. He answered on the second ring. Caleb, it's late. Is everything all right? Dad, I need you to tell me the truth about something, I said, and my voice was shaking. Did I have a twin brother that you didn't adopt? The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Dad, where are you right now? My dad asked, and his voice had changed completely. Who have you been talking to? That was answer enough. Oh my God, I said. It's true. I have a brother and you never told me. Caleb, you need to come home right now, my dad said urgently. Don't make any decisions until we talk face to face. His name is Isaac, I said, and he's dying. Did you know that? Did you know he was out there somewhere sick and dying? My dad's voice cracked. Come home, son. Please. We'll explain everything. I hung up without responding. David was watching me carefully. They knew, I said, and it wasn't a question. They knew the whole time. David nodded. I tried to contact them 7 years ago when I finally got clean and stable. I wanted to see you, to be part of your life. They threatened me with a restraining order, said I'd signed away my parental rights, and I had no claim to you. I felt like I was watching my life from outside my body. Everything I thought I knew was crumbling. Take me to the hospital, I said. I want to see him. David's face flooded with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. We got into his truck, an old Ford with rust spots and a cracked dashboard. The inside smelled like coffee and cigarettes. David drove carefully, like he was afraid I'd change my mind and jump out at a red light. Tell me about him, I said as we merged onto the highway. Tell me about Isaac. David's face softened. He's smart, probably smarter than both of us combined. Put himself through community college while working 2 jobs. Got accepted to a graduate program for education. He wants to be a teacher. The pride in David's voice was unmistakable. He found me about 8 months ago through one of those Ancestry DNA websites. I'd submitted my DNA years ago hoping one or both of you might do the same. Isaac showed up at my apartment one day and said, I think you're my father. I nearly had a heart attack. Despite everything, I almost smiled at the image. What did you say? I cried, David admitted. I stood there in my doorway and cried because I thought I'd lost both of you forever. Isaac didn't blame me for anything. He said he understood I'd been sick, that addiction is a disease. And then he got diagnosed? I asked. David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. 3 months after we reconnected. At first we thought it was just the flu. He was tired all the time, kept getting infections. By the time he finally went to the doctor, the leukemia was advanced. He started chemo immediately, but it's not working well enough. He needs a transplant. And you're not a match? I asked. No, David said, and the word came out heavy with guilt. Wrong HLA markers. I spent weeks getting tested and retested, hoping they'd made a mistake. But the science is clear. I can't save him. We drove in silence for a while. I watched the city lights blur past and tried to process everything. I had a twin brother, a person who shared my exact DNA, who'd been born 5 minutes after me, who'd lived a completely different life while I'd grown up with every advantage. What's he like? I asked. Besides smart. What's his personality? David thought for a moment. He's kind, almost too kind. He volunteers at a literacy center teaching adults to read. He remembers everyone's birthday. He laughs at terrible jokes. He's optimistic even when he has no reason to be. Something in my chest ached. He sounds like a good person. He's the best person I know, David said simply. And I include myself in that comparison even though I'm his father. He deserved so much better than what life gave him. We exited the highway and pulled into the hospital parking lot. St. Catherine's was a large complex with multiple buildings. David parked near the oncology wing. Before we go in, he said, turning off the engine, I need to tell you something. Isaac doesn't know I came to find you tonight. I told him I was still trying to track you down. He didn't want me to pressure you. He said if you wanted to be found, you'd find us. So why did you come? I asked. David's eyes were wet again. Because he's my son, and he's dying, and I would do anything, break any promise, cross any line to save him, even if it means he's angry with me for going behind his back. The raw honesty in his voice hit me hard. This man had spent years as an addict, had lost his children, had clawed his way back to sobriety, and now was watching his son die. Let's go, I said. We walked through the hospital's automatic doors, and David led me to the elevators. The oncology floor was quiet at this hour, with dimmed lights and the soft beep of medical equipment. A nurse at the desk recognized David and gave him a sympathetic smile. Back again? She asked gently. Couldn't stay away? David said. This is my other son, Caleb. He's here to visit Isaac. The nurse's eyes widened slightly. Oh, Isaac mentioned he had a twin, room 412, but he might be sleeping. We walked down the hallway past other rooms where I could glimpse sick people and worried families. David stopped outside room 412 and turned to me. Are you ready? He asked. I wasn't ready. I would never be ready for this, but I nodded anyway. David pushed open the door slowly. The room was dim, with just one small light on near the bed. Medical equipment lined the walls, and IV lines ran to the figure lying in the hospital bed. As my eyes adjusted, I saw him clearly for the first time. Isaac looked exactly like me. The same dark hair, though his was thinner and patchier from treatment. The same face structure, the same nose, the same build, though he was much thinner now. It was like looking in a mirror that showed a version of me that had lived a completely different life. A version of me that was dying. He was awake, his eyes open and watching us. When he saw me, his whole face changed. Holy shit, he whispered. You actually exist. I stepped closer to the bed, my heart pounding. I could say the same thing about you. Isaac tried to sit up and immediately winced in pain. David moved forward to help him, adjusting the pillows. Easy, David said. Don't hurt yourself. I'm fine, Isaac said, but his voice was weak. He was staring at me like I might disappear. Caleb, right? That's your name? Yeah, I said. Caleb Sutherland, or Montgomery. I'm not sure anymore. Isaac smiled, and it transformed his sick face into something brighter. I've been Caleb in my head for months. Ever since David told me he'd found you, I kept imagining what you'd be like, if we'd have anything in common besides DNA. I sat down in the chair next to his bed because my legs felt weak. This is surreal. I woke up this morning thinking I was an only child. I know the feeling, Isaac said. I spent 28 years thinking I was alone, and then I found out I had a twin and a father who'd been looking for me. The way he said it, with no bitterness or anger, made my chest tight. David said you're sick. Isaac's smile faded a little. Understatement of the year. But yeah, leukemia. The aggressive kind that likes to move fast. He said you need a bone marrow transplant. I do, Isaac said carefully. But I don't want that to be why we're meeting. I didn't ask David to track you down and pressure you. I wanted you to have a choice. He ambushed me at a bar, I said, glancing at David, who looked guilty. Showed me a photo and told me I had a dying brother. Not a lot of choice in that approach. Isaac's face fell. David, you promised you'd wait. You said we'd find another way. There is no other way, David said quietly. Every day we wait, you get worse. I couldn't watch that anymore. The tension in the room was thick. I looked between them and saw the desperation on David's face and the resignation on Isaac's. I'll get tested, I said. Both of them turned to look at me. You don't have to, Isaac said quickly. Just because we share DNA doesn't mean you owe me anything. You're my brother, I said, and saying the words out loud felt strange but right. I didn't know you existed until an hour ago, but you're my brother. Of course I'll get tested. Isaac's eyes filled with tears. Just like that? You don't want to think about it? What's there to think about? I asked. You need help, and I might be able to give it. That's not complicated. Isaac laughed, and it turned into a cough that made him grab his chest in pain. When he caught his breath, he was wiping tears away. You're either the nicest person in the world, or you haven't thought this through yet. Probably both, I admitted. David left the room, saying something about giving us privacy. I suspected he was crying in the hallway. Alone with Isaac, the silence felt heavy. Can I ask you something? Isaac said finally. Anything. What was it like, growing up with them? I knew who he meant. The Sutherlands. The parents who'd chosen me and not him. It was good, I said honestly. They loved me. They gave me everything. Nice house, good schools, family vacations. I never wanted for anything. Isaac nodded slowly. I'm glad. I used to imagine my twin was out there somewhere having a good life. It made the foster homes feel less lonely. The guilt that hit me was overwhelming. I'm so sorry. For what? Isaac asked, genuinely confused. You didn't do anything wrong. I got the good life, and you got nothing. I had parents, and you were alone. That's not your fault, Isaac said firmly. We were babies. We had no say in what happened to us. The adults made choices, good and bad, and we had to live with them. But you didn't choose to be adopted without me. I wanted to argue, but Isaac's expression made it clear he meant what he said. Tell me about the foster homes, I said. What were they like? Isaac settled back into his pillows. Mixed bag. Some were okay, some were awful, most were just indifferent. I was a quiet kid, didn't cause trouble, so I mostly got ignored. Moved around a lot because families would take me for the monthly check and then return me when they needed space for other kids. The casual way he described it made it worse somehow. That sounds horrible. It was what it was, Isaac said with a shrug. I learned to take care of myself early. By the time I was 12, I was basically self-sufficient. Packed my own lunches, did my own laundry, forged signatures on permission slips. You become independent fast when you realize no one's looking out for you. What about after? When you aged out? Couch surfed for a few months while working at a grocery store. Saved enough for a security deposit on a tiny apartment. Started taking classes at community college while working 2 jobs. It was hard, but I liked it. I was good at school, and no one could take that away from me. The pride in his voice was evident, and I felt a strange mixture of admiration and grief. We'd started at the exact same place, but our paths had been so different. David said you want to be a teacher, I said. Isaac's face lit up. Yeah. I got accepted to a master's program in education at State. Was supposed to start last fall, but then I got sick. They deferred my admission for a year, but now he trailed off, and I knew he was thinking about whether he'd survive long enough to use that deferral. You'll get there, I said. The transplant will work, and you'll start the program. You don't know that, Isaac said quietly. Even with a transplant, the survival rates aren't great. 5-year survival for someone with my type of leukemia is around 40%, even with the best treatment. The clinical way he recited the statistics told me he'd looked them up many times. You can't think like that. I have to think like that, Isaac said. I have to be realistic about what's probably going to happen. I don't want to get my hopes up just to have them crushed. We sat in silence for a moment. The medical equipment beeped steadily, marking time. Can I see your hand? Isaac asked suddenly. I held out my left hand and he reached for it with his own. His hand was thin and weak, but when he placed it next to mine, the birthmarks matched perfectly. Same size, same shape, same dark comma on our skin. Identical, Isaac whispered. In every way. Does it hurt? I asked. The treatments? Everything hurts, Isaac admitted. The chemo makes me feel like I'm being poisoned from the inside out. The infections that keep popping up are exhausting. Just being awake takes effort most days. I'm sorry, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. Don't be sorry, Isaac said. Just be here. That's more than I ever expected. David came back in eventually, his eyes red but his face composed. The doctor wants to talk to both of you tomorrow morning about the testing process. She'll be here at 8. I'll be here, I said. Isaac was looking at me with this expression of wonder and disbelief. Thank you, he said, for coming, for being willing to help, for not running away when David showed you that photo. Where else would I go? I asked. You're my brother. That night I left the hospital around midnight when a nurse insisted that Isaac needed to sleep. David walked me to my car in the parking lot. Thank you for doing this, he said. I know I basically kidnapped you from a bar and threw a lot of information at you very fast. You did, I agreed. But you were right. Isaac is running out of time. David nodded. I'll text you the doctor's information. She's expecting you tomorrow morning. I drove home in a daze. My apartment felt strange when I walked in, like it belonged to a different version of me. Everything looked the same, but I was different. I had a twin brother. I had a biological father. My adoptive parents had lied to me my entire life. My phone had 7 missed calls from my parents and 12 text messages begging me to call them back. I ignored all of them and went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, thinking about Isaac in that hospital bed, sick and alone, except for a father he'd only known for 8 months, thinking about all the years we could have been brothers if different choices had been made, thinking about how he'd grown up in foster care while I'd had every privilege, and how he didn't seem to hate me for it. The next morning, I was at the hospital at 7:30. David was already there, drinking terrible coffee from a machine in the waiting room. Couldn't sleep either? He asked when he saw me. Not at all. Isaac was awake when we went to his room, looking even more tired than yesterday. Morning? He said with a weak smile. Ready to get poked with needles for science? Can't wait, I said, sitting in the chair I'd occupied last night. Dr. Kimura arrived at exactly 8 o'clock. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner. You must be Caleb, she said, shaking my hand. Isaac's told me about you. Well, about the idea of you. I'm glad you're real. Me too, I said. Dr. Kimura pulled up a chair and opened a tablet. I want to explain the testing process and what we're looking for. Bone marrow transplants require a very close HLA match, human leukocyte antigen. Siblings have about a 25% chance of being compatible matches. Identical twins, however, have a 100% chance. So, we're definitely compatible? I asked. Almost certainly, Dr. Kimura said. But we still need to run the tests to confirm and to check for any complications. If you're a match, we'll need to harvest stem cells from your bone marrow, which involves a surgical procedure. What does that entail? I asked. We'll put you under general anesthesia and use a needle to extract marrow from your pelvic bone. You'll be sore for a few days afterward, but most donors recover fully within a few weeks. There are risks, as with any surgery, but they're minimal. I looked at Isaac, who was watching me carefully. When can we start? Dr. Kimura smiled. Right now. I'll have a nurse come take blood samples from both of you. We should have preliminary results in 48 hours, full confirmation within a week. A nurse came in and drew several vials of blood from each of us. Isaac barely flinched, clearly used to needles by now. I watched my blood fill the tubes and thought about how this same blood was flowing through Isaac's veins right now. After the nurse left, Dr. Kimura explained more about the transplant procedure and what Isaac would need to go through. We'll start with high-dose chemotherapy to destroy your existing bone marrow, she told Isaac. Then we'll infuse Caleb's stem cells, and hopefully they'll engraft and start producing healthy blood cells. And if they don't engraft? Isaac asked. Dr. Kimura's face was gentle, but honest. Then we'll try again, or we'll look at other options. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, we confirm the match. She left, and the three of us sat in Isaac's room processing everything. This is really happening, Isaac said quietly. You're really going to do this? Of course I am, I said. Why do you keep being surprised? Because most people wouldn't, Isaac said simply. Most people would say they need time to think, or they'd want to meet me first and build a relationship before committing to something this big. But you just jumped in. I thought about that. Maybe I'm impulsive, or maybe having a twin brother dying makes the decision pretty straightforward. David had been quiet this whole time, but now he spoke up. Your mother would be proud. Rebecca, I mean. She was like that too. She jumped into things without overthinking. Tell me about her, I said. What was she like? David's face softened with memory. She was fierce and kind and way too good for me, honestly. We met at a soup kitchen where she was volunteering and I was eating. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. How did you two end up together? I asked. She kept showing up, David said. Every week at the soup kitchen, she'd find me and we'd talk. She didn't judge me for being homeless or using. She just saw me as a person. Eventually, I got clean for a few months and we started dating. She got pregnant pretty fast and we were terrified but also excited. His voice cracked. She was so happy when she found out it was twins. She said it was like getting two miracles at once. What happened? Isaac asked softly. David wiped his eyes. The pregnancy was hard on her body. She had complications toward the end, but she refused to do anything that might risk you two. When labor started, it was too early, and there were problems. She hemorrhaged after the delivery. They couldn't stop the bleeding. The silence in the room was heavy. I relapsed that same night, David continued. I couldn't handle losing her and suddenly having two babies to take care of. I used for the first time in 6 months, and I didn't stop for 15 years. You're clean now, though, Isaac said. That matters. I've been clean for 10 years, David confirmed. Got into a program, got stable, got a job. But by then, you two were grown. I'd missed everything. We sat with that weight for a while. Then Isaac said, tell us a good memory. Something before everything fell apart. David smiled. The hospital let Rebecca hold you both right after you were born. She was exhausted and bleeding, but she wouldn't let the nurses take you away. She held one of you in each arm and counted your fingers and toes. She said, David, we made 2 perfect humans. Can you believe that? The image made my throat tight. Which one was I asked. You were baby A, Caleb, born first by 5 minutes. Isaac came next. 5 minutes older, I said to Isaac. I can hold that over you forever. Isaac laughed. Great. My long-lost twin brother is going to be annoying about birth order. The easy joke broke some of the tension, and we spent the next hour just talking. Isaac told stories about his various foster families. I told stories about growing up with the Sutherlands. David filled in what he knew about our mother and his journey to sobriety. It felt strange and natural at the same time, like we were building a relationship in fast forward. My phone kept buzzing with calls from my parents, but I continued to ignore them. Finally, David noticed. You should probably talk to them, he said. They deserve a chance to explain. They lied to me for 28 years, I said. What explanation could possibly make that okay? None, Isaac said quietly. But you might need to hear it anyway. For your own closure, not for them. I knew he was right, but I wasn't ready yet. Instead, I stayed at the hospital all day. I left briefly to get lunch for all of us, then came back and sat with Isaac while he slept. David went home in the afternoon to shower and change clothes, promising to return. When Isaac woke up, it was just the two of us. Can I ask you something personal? He said. Sure. Are you scared? About the transplant? I thought about it, honestly. A little. The surgery part makes me nervous. But mostly I'm scared it won't work, and you'll still be sick. Isaac nodded. I'm terrified it won't work, or that it will work, but my body will reject it, or that there'll be complications that make everything worse. There are so many ways this can go wrong. We can't think like that, I said, echoing his words from yesterday back at him. We have to think positive. Easy for you to say. Isaac said with a weak smile. You're not the one who's been sick for months. Fair point, I admitted. We were quiet for a moment, then Isaac said, I've been thinking about what happens after. If the transplant works and I get better, you'll finish your degree and become a teacher, I said. That's what happens. Maybe, Isaac said. But I was thinking about something else too. About us. About what it means to be brothers when we're just meeting now. What do you mean? I mean, we don't really know each other, Isaac said. We share DNA, but we're strangers. If I survive this, I want to actually know you. I want to know your favorite foods and what makes you laugh and what you're scared of and what you dream about. The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. I want that too. Really? Isaac asked. Because I'd understand if you just wanted to help medically and then go back to your regular life. You didn't sign up for a long-lost brother showing up and complicating everything. Stop that, I said firmly. Stop assuming I'm going to leave. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll do the transplant, and you'll get better, and we'll figure out how to be brothers. It might be messy and weird, but we'll do it. Isaac's eyes were wet. I really want to believe that? Then believe it, I said. I'm not the one who spent 28 years being let down by people. You have every reason to be cautious. But I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. We talked until Isaac fell asleep again, exhausted from the conversation. I sat there watching him breathe, thinking about how fragile he looked and how strong he'd had to be. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from my mom. Please, Caleb, we need to talk. We owe you an explanation. We made mistakes, but we love you. Please come home. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I'll come by tonight, but I'm not staying long. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual. I'd grown up in this neighborhood, played in these streets, knew every turn and landmark, but everything felt different now, tainted by the knowledge that it had all been built on lies. My parents were waiting in the living room when I arrived. My mom had clearly been crying. My dad looked older than I'd ever seen him. Caleb? My mom said, standing up. Thank you for coming. I didn't sit down. I stood near the door with my arms crossed. I'm here. Talk. My dad cleared his throat. First, we want to say we're sorry. We know we should have told you about Isaac. We know we made the wrong choice. Why didn't you? I asked. Why did you adopt one twin and not both? My parents looked at each other, having some silent conversation. Then my mom spoke. We were told we could only adopt one child. The agency said taking both twins would be too difficult for first-time parents, especially given their circumstances. That's not what the court documents say, I said. They say you specifically requested to adopt only one child, not that you were limited to one. My dad flinched. That's true. We did request that, but the reasoning was the same. We felt we could provide a better life for one child than a mediocre life for two. We wanted to give you everything. So you chose me, I said. Out of two identical babies, you picked me and left Isaac behind. It wasn't like that, my mom said desperately. The social worker said you had been slightly stronger at birth, that Isaac had some early feeding difficulties. We thought you would be easier to care for. It was a practical decision. The coldness of that explanation stunned me. You chose the easier baby. My parents both looked stricken. When you say it like that, it sounds horrible, my dad said. But at the time, we were trying to make the best choice for everyone. We thought Isaac would get adopted quickly too. We didn't know he'd end up in foster care for his entire childhood. Would it have mattered if you'd known? I asked. If someone had told you he'd never get adopted, would you have taken both of us? The silence that followed was damning. We don't know, my mom finally admitted. We wanted a child so badly, and we were afraid if we took both of you, we'd fail, that we wouldn't be good enough parents, and you'd both suffer. So you made sure only one of us would suffer, I said. At least Isaac's suffering was out of sight. That's not fair, my dad said, his voice rising. We gave you an incredible life. We loved you and supported you and gave you every opportunity. And he got nothing, I said. My brother got nothing because you decided one child was enough. My mom was crying again. We thought about him. Every birthday, every Christmas. We wondered where he was and if he was okay. We felt guilty, but we convinced ourselves we'd made the right choice. Did you ever try to find him? I asked. Or David? No, my dad said quietly. We were afraid of disrupting the adoption or losing you. The social worker warned us that birth parents sometimes tried to reclaim their children, and we didn't want to risk that. So you erased him, I said. You erased my brother and my biological father, and built a life where I never knew they existed. We wanted you to have a stable childhood, my mom said. We thought knowing about Isaac would only hurt you or make you feel guilty. You were right about the guilt, I said bitterly. I feel incredibly guilty, but at least I could have known him. We could have grown up together, or at least known each other. You took that from us. My parents looked destroyed, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for them. Isaac is dying, I said. He has leukemia and needs a bone marrow transplant. I'm getting tested to see if I'm a match. My mom gasped. Oh God, that poor boy. He's not a boy, I said. He's 28 years old. He's a man who grew up alone because you decided one child was enough. Caleb, please, my dad said. We know we made mistakes, but we can't change the past. All we can do is try to move forward. I don't know if I can do that, I said honestly. I don't know if I can forgive this. We're not asking for forgiveness, my mom said. We know that might take time or might never happen. But please don't shut us out completely. You're our son. We love you. Isaac is your son too, I said. Biologically, legally, you could have made him your son, but you chose not to. That tells me everything I need to know about your definition of love. I left before they could respond. Driving back to my apartment, I felt hollow. The anger was still there, but it was mixed with grief and confusion. The 2 weeks waiting for the full DNA results were the longest of my life. I spent most of my free time at the hospital with Isaac. We played card games, watched movies on his laptop, and talked about everything. He told me about his favorite foster mom, Mrs. Wu, who'd taught him to cook and let him stay in her home for 3 years before her husband got transferred for work. He told me about his best friend from community college, a guy named Theo who'd helped him study and let him sleep on his couch when times were rough. I told him about my college roommate and my job and my mundane everyday life that suddenly felt privileged and unearned. David came every day too, and slowly, we built something that felt like a family. The DNA results came back exactly as expected. I was a perfect match for Isaac. Dr. Kimura called us all into her office to go over the results and plan the transplant. The surgery is scheduled for 2 weeks from now, she said. Caleb, you'll need to come in for pre-op testing next week. Isaac, we'll start the conditioning chemotherapy in 10 days to prepare your body. Isaac looked terrified and hopeful at the same time. This is really happening. This is really happening, Dr. Kimura confirmed. Do you have any questions? What are the actual success rates? I asked. With a perfect match? And his type of leukemia? Dr. Kimura pulled up some charts. With an identical twin donor, success rates are significantly higher than with unrelated donors. We're looking at about 70% chance of remission. The biggest risks are graft versus host disease and infection in the first few months after transplant. 70%, Isaac repeated. Those are pretty good odds. They're excellent odds, Dr. Kimura said. Much better than without a transplant. We left her office with a surgery date and a thick packet of instructions. Isaac was quiet on the way back to his room. You okay? I asked. I'm scared, he admitted. This is my best chance, maybe my only chance. And if it doesn't work, it's going to work, I said firmly. We're not thinking about the alternative. Isaac smiled weakly. You sound like David. He says the same thing. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared for the surgery. I had multiple medical appointments, signed consent forms, and listened to doctors explain the risks. My parents called repeatedly, but I wasn't ready to talk to them yet. The anger hadn't faded. The night before the surgery, I stayed late at the hospital. Isaac was anxious, and the pre-transplant chemo had made him even sicker. Thank you, he said as I was getting ready to leave. For doing this. For being here. For being my brother. Stop thanking me, I said. This is what family does. Is it though? Isaac asked. Because most of my family never did anything like this for me. The sadness in his voice broke my heart. Then they weren't real family. But I am. And David is. And we're going to get you through this. Isaac reached out and took my hand. I'm really glad I found you. Even if the timing is terrible and we're meeting under horrible circumstances, I'm glad. Me too, I said honestly. I didn't know I was missing a brother until I met you, but now I can't imagine not having you in my life. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the surgery tomorrow, about anesthesia and needles and bone marrow extraction. But mostly I thought about Isaac and how he'd been strong enough to survive foster care and poverty, and now leukemia. If he could be that strong, I could handle one surgery. The hospital called me at 6 a.m. to come in. David picked me up from my apartment since I couldn't drive after the procedure. Ready? He asked as we drove through empty morning streets. Ready, I said, even though I was terrified. Isaac was already being prepped when we arrived. They'd started his final round of conditioning chemo yesterday, and he looked awful, but he smiled when he saw me. Big day, he said. Huge day, I agreed. A nurse came to take me to pre-op. David squeezed my shoulder. Thank you, son, for what you're doing. Rebecca would be so proud of both of you. The pre-op area was cold and clinical. They had me change into a gown and started an IV. The anesthesiologist came in to explain what would happen. We'll put you completely under, she said. The procedure takes about 2 hours. You'll wake up in recovery with some pain in your lower back and hips. Will it work? I asked. Will the marrow be good enough? She smiled. Your marrow is perfect. Healthy, young, ideal for transplantation. Isaac is very lucky to have you. They wheeled me into the operating room, which was bright and full of equipment. Dr. Kimura was there, already scrubbed in. Ready to save your brother? She asked. Let's do this, I said. The anesthesiologist put a mask over my face. Count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before everything went black. I woke up in recovery feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My entire lower back ached, and moving even slightly sent pain shooting through my hips. A nurse was checking my vitals. Welcome back, she said. Surgery went perfectly. We got an excellent sample of stem cells from you. How's Isaac? I asked, my voice coming out rough. They're infusing your cells now. He's doing well so far. David appeared in my recovery room doorway. How are you feeling? Like someone drilled into my bones, I said. Because someone did drill into my bones. David laughed, but his eyes were wet. You did it. You actually did it. They got everything they needed. They moved me to a regular room after a few hours. The pain medication helped, but I was still sore and exhausted. David stayed with me, and we watched TV without really paying attention. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Thinking of you today. We love you and we're proud of you." I stared at the message for a long time before putting the phone down without responding. "You should talk to them eventually," David said. "I'm not ready," I said. "Maybe someday, but not now." Dr. Kimura came to check on me that evening. "The infusion is complete," she said. "Isaac received your stem cells, and now we wait to see if they engraft. The next few weeks will be critical." "When can I see him?" I asked. "Tomorrow, if you're feeling up to it. But you'll need to wear protective gear since his immune system is essentially non-existent right now." I spent the night in the hospital, sleeping poorly between pain medication doses. The next morning, they helped me into a wheelchair, since walking was still difficult. David wheeled me to Isaac's room in the isolation wing. We had to put on gowns and masks and gloves before going in. Isaac looked terrible. The chemo and radiation had destroyed what little strength he'd had left, but he was awake, and he smiled when he saw me. "Hey, twin," he said weakly. "How's your back?" "Sore," I admitted, "but worth it. They told me the cells looked perfect," Isaac said. "Now we just wait and hope they like their new home. They're going to love it," I said. "They're going to move in and start making healthy blood cells immediately." Isaac reached out a gloved hand, and I took it carefully. "Thank you," he whispered. "I know I keep saying it, but thank you." "We're brothers," I said. "This is what brothers do." The next 3 weeks were agonizing. I recovered from the surgery, but Isaac got sicker before he could get better. The chemotherapy destroyed his existing bone marrow, leaving him vulnerable to every infection. He spent days in isolation, and we could only visit wearing full protective equipment. There were moments when it looked like his body might reject the transplant. His fever spiked to dangerous levels. He developed infections that required heavy antibiotics. There were 2 nights when David and I sat in the waiting room, terrified we'd lose him. But slowly, gradually, things started improving. His blood counts began to rise. The fever came down. He started keeping food down. Dr. Kimura did daily tests and monitoring. 4 weeks after the transplant, she called us into Isaac's room with a huge smile. "The engraftment is successful," she said. "Caleb's cells have taken hold and are producing healthy blood cells. Isaac's counts are still low, but they're rising steadily." Isaac started crying. David started crying. I started crying. We were all crying and hugging in that hospital room, and it felt like a miracle. "I'm going to live," Isaac said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "You're going to live," Dr. Kimura confirmed. "You're not out of the woods yet. The next few months will still be difficult, and you'll need to be very careful about infections. But your prognosis has gone from terminal to potentially curative." The relief was overwhelming. Isaac still had a long recovery ahead of him. He stayed in the hospital for another 6 weeks, building strength and fighting off minor infections. I visited every day, sometimes for hours. We used the time to really get to know each other. I learned that Isaac loved terrible sci-fi movies and made the best hospital food jokes. He learned that I was terrible at video games and couldn't carry a tune. We discovered we both loved spicy food and hated mushrooms. We had the same laugh and the same tendency to fidget when nervous. We found we could sometimes finish each other's sentences or know what the other was thinking. Small things that proved we were more than just genetically connected. David was there constantly too, and slowly we became a real family. Not a traditional one, but something genuine built from second chances. 8 weeks after the transplant, Isaac was finally cleared to leave the hospital. David had rented a small house where Isaac could recover, since his old apartment wasn't suitable for someone immunocompromised. "You're coming to the discharge, right?" Isaac asked me the night before. "I wouldn't miss it," I said. The next day, watching Isaac walk out of the hospital on his own feet was one of the best moments of my life. He was thin and tired and still had a long recovery ahead, but he was alive. 6 months after the transplant, Isaac was declared to be in full remission. His hair had grown back, he'd gained weight, and he looked healthier than I'd ever seen him. We celebrated at David's house with a small dinner. Just the 3 of us, the strange family we'd become. "I got the letter from the university," Isaac said during dinner. "My admission deferral is still good. I can start the education program next fall if I want to." "That's amazing," I said. "Are you going to do it?" Isaac smiled. "Yeah, I think I am. I have a second chance at life. Might as well use it to do something meaningful." David reached over and squeezed Isaac's shoulder. "Your mother would be so proud. Both of your mothers." The comment made me think of my adoptive parents, who I still hadn't fully reconciled with. I'd seen them a few times over the past months, brief and awkward visits where we tiptoed around the hurt. "I think I'm ready to really talk to the Sutherlands," I said, "to try to work things out." Isaac looked at me seriously. "You don't have to forgive them for my sake. What they did was wrong." "I know," I said, "but holding on to anger isn't helping anyone. They made terrible choices, but they also raised me and loved me. Maybe we can find some kind of middle ground." A week later, I invited my parents to dinner. I asked David and Isaac to come too, which terrified everyone involved. We met at a restaurant, neutral territory. My parents looked nervous walking in. When they saw David and Isaac, they both froze. "Mom, Dad," I said, "this is my biological father, David Montgomery, and this is my brother, Isaac." The silence was painful. Then my mom walked forward with tears streaming down her face. Isaac, she said, you're alive. You're healthy. Thanks to Caleb, Isaac said, his voice neutral but not hostile. My dad looked at David. I owe you an apology. We kept your son from you. David's face was complicated. You gave him a good life. I couldn't have done that then. I was too sick, too broken. But you should have told him the truth. We should have. My dad agreed. We were wrong. The dinner was awkward but not terrible. My parents asked Isaac about his life, and he told them about foster care and college and the transplant. They listened with visible guilt and sadness. They apologized to both Isaac and David for their choices. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a start. Over the following year, we slowly built something new. I stayed close with Isaac and David, seeing them several times a week. My relationship with my adoptive parents improved gradually, though it would never be the same. Isaac started his master's program and thrived. He called me every week with updates about his classes and student teaching. David continued working and going to meetings, proud of his 10 years of sobriety and his relationship with both sons. 2 years after that night in the bar when David had first grabbed my hand, Isaac graduated with his master's degree in education. We all attended the ceremony, me, David, and yes, even the Sutherlands. Isaac walked across the stage to receive his diploma, healthy and strong, and I thought about how close we'd come to losing him. After the ceremony, we took photos together, all of us. This strange, extended family built from tragedy and choice and second chances. Isaac put his arm around me, and we stood there, identical twins who'd found each other just in time. Thank you, Isaac said quietly. Just for me, for everything, for saving my life. Thank you for letting me, I said, for being my brother. David put his arms around both of us. Your mother would have loved this. Both of you together, both of you thriving. This is what she wanted. And standing there surrounded by this complicated, imperfect family, I finally understood what family really meant. Not just blood or genetics or who raised you, but who showed up, who stayed, who loved you through the impossible moments. I'd lost one family and gained another. Isaac had survived against terrible odds. David had fought his way to sobriety and reconnection. Even my adoptive parents were trying to make amends and build new relationships. It wasn't a perfect, happy ending. We all still carried scars from the choices that had been made 28 years ago. But we were here, together, moving forward. That night at the celebration dinner, Isaac raised his glass. To second chances, he said. And to brothers who show up when it matters most. To family, I added. However it comes together. We clinked glasses, and I looked around at these people who'd become my family in the most unexpected way. David, who'd fought so hard to get clean and find us. Isaac, who'd survived foster care and cancer with grace and kindness. Even the Sutherlands, who'd made terrible choices, but were trying to do better. This was my family now, all of them, complicated and messy, and built from broken pieces, but real. And as I sat there listening to Isaac tell stories about his students and watching David laugh, I realized something important. That stranger grabbing my hand in a bar 2 years ago had torn my life apart. But in the destruction, we'd found something better. We'd found each other, and that was worth everything. Thanks for hanging out till the end. If you want more stories, make sure to subscribe and leave your take below.